Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, is under attack as Russia pushes forward in the second day of its invasion. Residents of Kyiv heard air raid sirens this morning and explosions were heard in the hours before dawn. An apartment building was partially destroyed by apparent shell fragments. The Ukrainian army says it is now fighting Russian forces outside the capital. We're waiting for confirmation of that. Sirens and explosions have also been heard in other cities across Ukraine. This is the situation right now in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. These are live pictures. As you can see, it seems fairly calm at Maidan Square, one of the main landmarks in the heart of the city. But we have noted in our rolling coverage that many people have been hiding in shelters and underground stations after a second night of explosions and the early hours of the morning in the capital as well. Our correspondent we were speaking to earlier, Matthias Böhlinger, also having to evacuate his position, having said that shelling had begun in the capital. The Ukrainian government says at least 137 people have been killed and hundreds wounded across the country since Russia's invasion began early on Thursday. Russia is continuing its air, sea and land assault, taking territory including the former Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says the fate of Europe is being decided in his country.
Ukrainian soldiers on the outskirts of the eastern city of Kyiv, inspecting just some of the carnage from day one of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Then, after dusk, the destruction continued. In Kyiv, civilians took refuge in subway stations, looking for whatever safety they could find. Also in the Ukraine capital, Kyiv, people headed for the underground, fearful Russia could launch airstrikes.
I'm here because I think it's one of the only places right now where you can hide in Kyiv. All the other places are terrifying.
At a strategic airbase just 20 kilometers away from the capital, reports of Russian forces in control. However, Ukraine says it prevented a complete takeover of the facility. Ukrainian troops have set up roadblocks throughout the city's government quarter. Late on Thursday night, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said he was aware of the danger, but that he was remaining in the capital.
According to our information, the enemy has listed me as target number 1 and my family as target number 2. They want to destroy the country politically, terminating the head of state.
Satellite images also show the destruction Russia is raining down on Ukraine. Here, the damage to airfields in the east of the country. And Russia is proving it's not only interested in military facilities. Ukrainian officials confirmed they've lost control of the decommissioned Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The scene of the world's worst nuclear disaster is now in Russian hands.
DW correspondent Fanny Fachad joins me on the line from outside Kyiv. Fanny, what is the situation now in the capital? I believe you've moved yourself out. Just tell us what you've been through overnight since we last spoke.
Well, to say that the situation is tense would be quite an understatement. Actually, at this point, it is terrifying, given what we actually went through last night. We had to seek shelter ourselves. There were sirens going off, and in fact, just like yesterday, shortly after 4 a.m., the first explosions were heard. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you loud and clear.
Hello?
Fanny, I can hear you fine. If you can hear me, keep talking. Tell us more about the night and what you went through.
Thank you so much. There was an acoustic problem here. So it was a quite terrifying situation tonight, as we had to seek shelter ourselves. We could only keep up with the reporting from inside. There was a curfew in place, which still is in place, of course, from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m. And we just had to hunker down just like everyone else. As you have seen in that report, people were trying to seek for shelter in the subway, in the metro stations. And in fact, as for this moment, we're trying to leave Kyiv, which is a challenge for itself. Just in front of me, traffic is building up. It's not just us who is trying to leave, but tens of thousands of people with us. Already apparently around 100,000 Ukrainians have exited or tried to exit the roads that are still open towards the western part of Ukraine. But let me tell you, there's so many rumors at this point that some people really wonder, is it the right time to leave or is it better to stay put? I'm not invested in rumors, but what I can tell you for sure that given the escalation of the conflict, also the shelling that Kyiv experienced early this morning, there is an indication that actually a bigger clash, really a terrifying situation is going to play out between Ukrainian and Russian forces as the battle is going to be playing out here at the capital city of Ukraine. Already, as we have seen, there was a back and forth in terms of who is going to control the critical military airport about 50 kilometers outside of Kyiv. Currently, according to Ukrainian information, Ukraine still holds that position, which in fact is a success for Ukraine because after all, we of course know that Russia is quite superior in terms of military personnel, military gear. So to them, actually, it is, rather I should say, it's being expressed as a very successful situation by the Ukrainian government. It's of course very important to motivate people who are staying put here, who want to defend their country and not to give up their sovereignty to Russian forces.
What about the Ukrainian president? He is said to still be in the country. How dangerous is the situation for him right now?
The Ukrainian president is steadfast in saying he's going to stay. He knows that he's the number one enemy for Russia right now. And the number two enemy is his family. But he says he's going to stay, and everything what we know about what his actions or policies in the next hours are going to be, we can read on Twitter. In fact, he took to Twitter again to say that he wants to actually call on NATO allies such as to help with more military defensive assistance. But also, in fact, he called on his counterpart in Poland, Mr. Duda, to somehow help and mediate here, that there is a sort of negotiation possible still with Vladimir Putin to basically bring back Putin to the negotiation table. This is what Zelenskyy actually just announced a short while ago, which clearly tells you that Mr. Zelenskyy is still somehow trying to probably really prevent that this is going to further escalate into, unfortunately, more bloodshed. As we have already seen, there were already scores of people injured and killed in this new level of escalation, which at this point is a flat-out full-scale invasion by Russia, an aggression that is that of equal to a war, even though Russia never declared a war. They declared a military operation. But what is happening is really an invasion from all sides, from the north, rather from the northern part of Ukraine, from the south, from the east, on all ranges. We are sea, we are air, we are land. So it is a really terrible situation right now for the people in Ukraine who cannot decide still, though, is it safe enough for them to leave, but also for very practical reasons, because they do not have gasoline, they do not have the logistics to leave.
Fanny, what are the main ways out right now?
The way out, or the main way that everyone is seeking right now, is still the route towards Lviv, which is let's say, the biggest town towards the western part of Ukraine, or on the western border of Ukraine, neighboring Slovakia, neighboring Poland. That is the route that everyone is seeking at this point. But of course, this can also change by the hour, given that the Russian forces are trying to apparently limit people from leaving where they are. They want to encircle Kyiv. As a result, it's going to be very difficult to make a decision which direction to take.
Fanny Fachar for us reporting. Stay safe. She was in Kyiv yesterday, but as you heard there's been shelling, and they've now moved their position further to the west of the country. We'll be in touch later in the day. Thank you very much, Fanny.
Thank you.
Well, Dima Kilchenko is in Khmelnytsky in the west of the country. He works for the DW Academy, which promotes media freedom, and he moved his family out from Kyiv just yesterday. Tell us about your day and what you've been experiencing.
Hi. Well, it was quite complicated yesterday. We woke up at 5:30 a.m. because we heard the explosions, and it's very hard to confuse this sound with something else. And we understood straight away that the war has started. So we, without any hesitation, we took our kids, and I have two, and we got into the car and started to get out of Kyiv, because we understand that Kyiv would be the main goal, right, of Russian aggression. And it took us about 10 hours to take the kids to my hometown, which is in the western Ukraine, while usually it's about 3 hours. It was massive traffic jams, and you could see buildings on the horizons burning, and smoke was going out from them. It was pretty scary. And then hour by hour, the news started to come out that Russians are invading Ukraine through several borders. It was very scary, I would say.
Dima, what was going through your head when you made that 10-hour journey with two kids in the car?
First of all, you don't believe that it's happening. You cannot believe, and even when you see tanks, Ukrainian tanks going like on the other side of the road, because I was going to the west and they were on the east, you just cannot believe that it's true. It looks like you are in some kind of film. But then when you see the news and you hear the radio, you start believing it, and all you have in your head is basically fear, and you just don't believe that it's true.
How do you see this situation progressing? I mean, for you, you're basically, it sounds like you're on the run. What are you going to do with your family, and what are your expectations?
Well, yeah, it is, to some extent we are on the run, but the first goal was to get out of the danger zone, and which we did yesterday. Of course, no one slept yesterday, and I have my friends come and also who left later. It took them about 12 to 15 hours because of the traffic. And for the main task of the yesterday was to make sure that we are safe and that our friends are safe. And today, I think it's a waiting day. We need to understand what will happen next. To my understanding, Kyiv will be the main goal, and we already hear the news, and my friends who stayed say that you can hear the shooting and the bombing, and there are fights in Kyiv right now. So we will understand the status by the end of the day, and then we'll decide. I think that probably we need to secure my family and my kids either somewhere here in Ukraine, or make sure that they're safe abroad. I am not allowed to go abroad because mobilization was announced this night, and every man 18 to 60 can be drafted, and he cannot be allowed to leave Ukraine. So, and then we'll probably wait for the development of situations, and if we have to fight, then we will fight.
How prepared would you say you are to fight for your country?
I'm absolutely not. I mean, frankly speaking, I've never had a gun in my hand in my life. I never shot a firearm, so I am not prepared at all.
And your family, what does it think about what you're going to do?
Yesterday night, my daughter, who is 6 years old, she asked me if I'm going to war. And I said, if I have to, I will. And of course, she asked me not to do that. But you see, like when your country is invaded, who, if not us, will do it?
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. DW employee Dima Kilchenko in Western Ukraine. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And recapping the latest developments on Russia's war on Ukraine. Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, has come under renewed attack as Russia ramps up its invasion, now in its second day. Air raid sirens have sounded in Kyiv and other cities this morning, and blasts were heard in the hours before dawn. An apartment building was partially destroyed. The Ukrainian army says it is now fighting Russian forces outside the capital. Clashes have been reported in the city's north. The Ukraine government says dozens have died since the invasion began and hundreds more have been injured. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed his nation this morning. He told Ukrainians that they were also targets of Russia's attacks.
It's the second morning of a full-scale war. At 4 a.m., the Russian forces continued making rocket strikes on the Ukrainian territories. They say civilian objects are not the target. It's a lie. The reality is they make no discrimination wherever they act. Just like yesterday, both military and civilians are under Russian attack. The purpose of this attack is to pressure us, to put pressure on you, citizens of Ukraine, on our whole society.
And we can now go to our Russian affairs analyst, Konstantin Egert, on the line from Vilnius, Lithuania. Konstantin, could you first of all just comment on what we were hearing from one of our colleagues there in the west of the country about his prospects? He's been called up to fight. His family is looking for safety and is on the move through the western part of the country. What's going to happen with all of these refugees?
It is a very important question, Ben, because there may be potentially millions of these people trying to escape war via the border with the European Union, Poland and Slovakia, and actually Hungary too. So I think that there's going to be a big exodus of people from Ukraine, and the European Union should be prepared for that. As for our colleague who may be drafted and who never expected to be drafted, of course, well, as far as I understand, such people are given basic military training, and of course it is a very high-risk thing to send unprepared people to the front, but it seems that this is what is happening and will be happening with Ukrainian men, essentially, who are being called out. And this is a logical, tragic, but logical continuation of what actually happens in such circumstances.
I mean, having a gun shoved in your hands for the first time, where does that put Ukrainians' army when it comes to fighting off the Russians?
Well, first and foremost of all, as far as I understand, there is a core professional army in Ukraine, and quite a lot of volunteers who fought in the East all these 8 years. So there are much more many prepared people who can fight. As far as I understand also, and this seems to me quite logical, lots of people were prepared in a paramilitary way, and there will be people who know how to handle guns. I don't know, hunters, for example, people that exercise in rifle clubs, who will be prepared to fight. I think that this is actually Russia's biggest challenge. You can occupy Kyiv. I think that we see it's possible. But what are you going to do next? You can't essentially run a 44 million country with the hugest, biggest territory in Europe with an occupation force of even actually, I think, 150 or 200,000. That's impossible. And it's a very diverse country. It's a country that's prepared to resist. I think that this is a very, very hard military endeavor for Vladimir Putin. And frankly speaking, I think that this day that just passed, first day of war, real war, is already a PR disaster for the Kremlin. We don't see, joyous crowds, flags, bread and salt, columns of surrendered Ukrainian soldiers. This is what is expected. I mean, forgive me for sounding cynical. That is what is expected from such kind of lightning war with a big propaganda twist. We see nothing of that.
Konstantin, there's been much talk of the Ukrainian army being vastly inferior to Russia's, but we are getting reports of some small victories, if you will, by the Ukrainian army, including missiles striking a military airfield in Rostov in southern Russia. How significant is that, though?
It is very significant. I think, to me, my army experience is limited to 3 years as an officer in the national service after the university, but my understanding of that is that this is part of a very, very significant strategy of taking the fight to the Russian territory. Of course, the army is much smaller, and Of course, it's much more limited, but it is a signal to the Kremlin. We can make things very unpleasant for you. For example, you heard reports about the possibility of the Russian special forces saboteurs being already in Kyiv. Well, it's a 2,000 kilometers porous border between the two countries. You can infiltrate Ukrainian saboteurs into Russian cities to strike, let us say, Russian military sites. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this happens. This is something that not only the Kremlin, but I think also, and that's probably more important, the Russian population does not expect. So in a sense, it is a very serious part of this hit, maybe not very significant militarily, the hit on the Russian airbase, is a very potent psychological strike in a psycho war that's being waged now by the two sides.
Konstantin Eggert, thank you very much for the analysis.
Thank you.